All right, so this is part 2 of the lab safety and equipment slideshow. And we're going to go ahead and bust out with the bullets. So go ahead and read along with me. Again, a lot of this is common sense, but I still want to go over it, make sure everybody is familiar with all the lab safety procedures in my classroom, even though it may be a bit tedious to have to go through, but it is something that I think you still need to go over. So let's continue. Never touch chemicals with hands. Never touch chemicals with hands less instructed to do so. There's very rarely a time, in fact I can't really think of a time where you're actually going to touch a chemical with your hands. There's really no lab that's going to require that. So when I say don't touch the chemicals, that should be common sense. The chemicals that we use are going to be in things: beakers, Erlenmeyer flask, test tubes, crucibles, evaporating dishes, and so on and so forth. Don't ever taste chemicals. The old saying I used to, or the old example I used to give is, if you see a beaker and it looks like it has water in it, a lot of chemicals look like water. And you don't want to bring something like hydrochloric acid, which looks identical to water in a beaker, into your mouth. So obviously, don't taste chemicals. That should be pretty easy to understand. Labels on the chemicals you're using, make sure you read them carefully. If it says to get sodium chloride, don't get potassium chloride. If it says to get hydrochloric acid, don't get nitric acid. Very important to keep track of that. Wafting technique. We have somebody that's going to show us how to do wafting. Here's an example of wafting properly. When you are asked to smell a chemical, you never bring it directly to your nose. You do as this gentleman's doing. So let's make sure we waft properly when we are using chemicals. Anything that spills, I need to know, because certain chemicals have specific ways they need to be cleaned up. So, for example, if you spill an acid, you don't want to just clean up the acid. You can get burned by the acid. You want to pour a base on an acid. So typically we'll have some sodium bicarbonate, some baking soda solution lying around the lab, and if we spill an acid, the first thing we do is we pour the baking soda solution onto the acid. We'll see it bubble, and after the bubbling stops, we know that it's been neutralized. If we have a base spill, we typically have vinegar and acid to pour on it. So if a base spills, we clean it up with an acid. If an acid spills, we clean it up with a base. Real simple concept. Also, when you're mixing acids, diluting them, we'll get more into that when we talk about solutions, but for right now, just understand that when you are trying to mix acids with water, you always add the acid to the water, never water to the acid. And the reason for that is, if you add water to concentrated acid, the acid tends to get very hot very fast. It reacts with the water and can almost sometimes boil, which can cause it to spatter. And anything spattering, if it's a little bit of water and a lot of strong acid, can hurt. Whereas if you are adding the acid to the water, the reaction is not quite as vigorous. You're less likely to get spattering. And if you do get spattering, it's typically going to be a diluted acid, as opposed to the acid that's very strong being spattered up. So always add acid to water, never water to acid. All right, that's part 2 of lab safety and materials. Part 3 will be coming soon.